Hey folks in English 2323, it's Dr. E. What I want to do in this brief video is just walk through the different guidelines and expectations for the discussion posts. So this doesn't necessarily apply for our first week because we're walking through introductions and there's a different kind of expectation for the first week, but moving on in additional weeks, there will, it will follow these rubric expectations and guidelines. So something to kind of start thinking about now as we move through the different weeks of the semester. So I'm just going to pull up the document here, which is posted in D2L. And so it's set up like a general rubric. On the left-hand side, we have the grade. So we have A, and we have the points that are awarded. So we'll have varied points awarded for different posts. So we're starting off with 5, maybe 10-point posts, and then we'll get into the 15. So, you want to be in this range for an A if we're 15 points, this for B if we're in, or I'm sorry, for A for 20 points, that kind of thing. If you scroll down, then there are the expectations and points range for B, and then for a C. Of course, I've included D and Boo F, but I'm not even going to walk through those because we should really not be striving for those grades. We're going to walk through generally the A and B area. So I have categories listed here. So content is just, what it sounds like, the content of what you are sharing in the or writing in the post. And then the format just relates to, the length expectations, that kind of thing. The UG stuff is really surface level kind of, those spelling and grammar, that kind of thing. And then responses. So when you are required to respond to a couple of colleagues, these are the expectations for an A grade, okay? So with content, you want to make sure that you're adhering to the prompt. This is especially true if there are kind of multiple questions that I pose. Generally, that will be the case. I'm not just going to ask one single question. I will have kind of various things I want you to think about and address in a particular prompt. And you want to make sure you're showing a clear understanding of the reading, right? You need to show that you've read. This becomes really important in an online course because I'm not with you. We're not having a face-to-face discussion. So you have to kind of show that through your writing, show that you've actually engaged in and read the work. Some weeks we will have pretty heavy reading loads, especially the first couple of weeks, which is not ideal, but it's something where we want to hit the ground running and get to a certain comfort level with not only the text and D2L, and that will happen through those longer readings and those introductory readings especially. So you need to show that you've read, right? The ideas are well structured and clear. If research is required, which a lot of times it will be, you'll need to pull quotes and information to support your ideas. The quotes are incorporated clearly. You're not just kind of dumping those quotes in the middle of paragraphs without explaining them. You're giving credit to the original author or speaker, depending on if it's a video or something that we've read. And then the relevance or the importance of the quotes are definitely clear and explained. So one of my pet peeves, and I will always try to, sorry, my chair is making noise. I will always try to tell you what my pet peeves are because I think it's really unfair that professors have them and don't share them because how are you supposed to know? So one of my pet peeves is definitely when students just drop quotes in the middle of work. They're not giving credit to the author. The quote may not be accurate. That's a big no-no, right? But you want to make sure that in your writing you're starting to get into the groove, and this is something you've probably learned in previous classes, especially something like 1301. Make sure that you're introducing the quote, you're sharing the quote, and then you're explaining it, right? You're not just assuming that the reader understands exactly why that quote is something that you chose. You have to give that explanation. And you especially want to incorporate the quote into your own sentence, right? And that can come with the introductory part. You can say, according to Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, in this section of The Speckled Band, Sherlock Holmes, and then you can start the quote, right? So I'm giving you a sense of what I'm talking about, who the author is, and then at the end of that quoted section, I would include the page number, which is also something that's required. This becomes really important depending on which section you're in, so that will be a different page number for some of us. So make sure that you are accurately identifying not only the quote, but also the page number following MLA guidelines. And I'll post some links to MLA resources just to kind of refresh your memory on some of these kinds of things, okay? So then we get into the format, right? So it meets the minimum length requirement, and generally I'm looking for paragraphs that are 4 to 5 sentences just on average, but usually we're going for 6 to 7 because research is often going to be required. And that 6 to 7 means you, again, have put aside some space to introduce and explain the quote, so that adds more sentences. If research is required, MLA formatting guidelines are followed. I always reference the Purdue Online Writing Lab website, and I will place the link in D2L because it's just a quick, easy guide to MLA. The work reflects student proofreading and self-editing. Y'all, it's going to become something that I say just standard. Compose your work in Microsoft Word. Use the spell check and the grammar check features because those are just helpful. They're not always 100% perfect, but they're helpful. If you're using Google Docs, you can also use the grammar and spell check features there. You just have to make sure they are turned on. And I am always going to tell you to use any resources that are going to be helpful to you. So use Grammarly if you want to. Use whatever help you can get as long as it is not something that is doing the work for you. Go and look at SparkNotes for some information about a text, but don't solely rely on SparkNotes, right? That's just giving you some brief glimpses, whereas reading the actual text is always going to be key and important. But use resources that are available to you. Why not, right? But don't rely solely on them, okay? So you want to make sure that you've done everything you can to make sure that the writing, spelling, grammar, all of that is corrected, right? You're avoiding those sentence fragments, run-on sentences, you know, just kind of the basics of what we're kind of expecting in terms of college writing. Very few grammatical issues. I'm not a grammar expert. I don't assume that you're a grammar or spelling expert, but I do assume that you take some time to correct some issues, right? If the grammar issues are so extensive that I can't follow your ideas or your colleagues can't follow your ideas, that's when it will really start to affect your grade, right? I'm not a person who's going to take off half a point here, half a point there for single grammar issues. It's when they become overwhelming and make it impossible to follow your ideas, that's when it will affect your grade, okay? And then you are responding, to thoughtful, well-organized responses to other students with at least a paragraph, which is 4 to 5 sentences, or more if required. Sometimes I'll ask you to create questions for your colleagues to answer. So that will dictate the length of the response, but generally, even if you're responding to 2 questions, we should have at least 4 to 5 sentences in there. Show that you've read the work, the post by the original author, your colleague, and show that you are responding directly to those questions. You've read them completely or you've responded to their ideas, and bring in your own knowledge of the text that we're referencing and thinking about, right? So always, always you're going to want to show that you've read. Remember that the discussion posts are not for you to focus on editing other people's ideas. If somebody is misunderstanding an idea or if they have some grammatical issues, you don't need to correct that. I will approach that person individually and offer some feedback, on that level. We're really focusing on ideas and what we're reading in the text, okay? So let me know if you have any questions about that. So if you go down to the section, that's if you're aiming for a B, it's mostly, right? You're doing most of what is in the section for an A, but you may be missing a few things here or there, okay? So you're still writing a pretty great post, but you're maybe not hitting on every single aspect of the prompts, but you're mostly there. It generally reflects student proofreading. It's mostly free of those surface level issues. So, it's just not adhering quite as much to the expectations for the A grade as it could. And then the C is much the same. So you aren't adhering as much to a B grade, and those expectations. So take some time to look through this information. And again, it may not be quite relevant in the first week, but it's something that I want you to start thinking about now so that in future weeks you can hit the ground running with those posts. If you have any questions, you can always post in the Q&A area of the discussion board, or you can send me an email, whichever you prefer, but the Q&A area is really great and it's anonymous, so something to consider. And hopefully if you have any questions, I can address those with the entire class. So I may post in the Q&A area with that information. So take care, good luck, let me know if you have questions.